Sense, weekdays on CBS Mornings.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
It's a history-making meeting. 4 extraordinary women who are all 4-star generals and admirals.
How did you deal with being discriminated against?
I just worked harder.
The future of an ever-evolving U.S. military when we go person to person.
The grand jury considering whether to indict former President Donald Trump was told to stay home.
Nobody quite knows what to expect. New York, fortunately, has the resources to operate always with an abundance of caution.
The banking system, our economy needs some stability for its future.
Our decision was to move ahead with a 25 basis point hike.
The average 15 to 24-year-old in the U.S. spends an hour a day on TikTok. There is a tremendous amount of data being collected on U.S. citizens.
The way we run the government, I think, is no daily drama, focus on the big picture, and put points on the board, and I think that that's something that's very important.
Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Nicole Killian in Washington. Thank you for joining us. Law enforcement sources tell CBS News a New York grand jury investigating former President Donald Trump will not meet today. It's still unclear when a potential indictment could come down, though the former president claimed it would happen this week. The Manhattan DA is investigating Trump for allegedly falsifying business records to hide campaign finance violations. It's connected to payments made to adult film actor Stormy Daniels. The former president is at Mar-a-Lago preparing with his legal team. For more on this, CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins us now. Bob, good to see you. Why isn't the grand jury meeting today, and do we know why it was called off?
Good to be with you, Nicole. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is operating on his own timeline. They decided to delay the grand jury convening today, and they're taking their time to decide whether they want to call additional witnesses, whether he needs more time to deliberate in the case he presents to the grand jury about a possible indictment of former President Trump. The essence of this moment, repertorially, is patience.
And so, based on what you're hearing, is there still a chance there can be an indictment this week, or do you think this may take a while?
The grand jury could be convened on Thursday, but again, District Attorney Alvin Bragg is signaling that he's not going to be rushed when it comes to a decision, a historic decision about whether he will indict a former president, Donald Trump, about hush money payments made to Stormy Daniels in 2016. This has been an extensive process. It started out as a federal case. Now it's a case here at the criminal court in Manhattan. It's gone through a lot of different phases over the years. Finally, now it comes to the decision of a district attorney. But there's so much else circulating about this case, about whether witnesses will be called, exactly how it would be framed in terms of the indictment. And so the former president and his team remain waiting down in Florida.
And I know as we watch and wait, law enforcement there in New York has stepped up and increased a presence there. I know you spoke earlier with New York City Police Commissioner Bill Bratton. Let's listen to your conversation.
If former President Trump is indicted and arrives at Manhattan criminal court, what would the security challenges be?
Significant in the sense they would probably have to close off portions of the court if it was done at the court. That has not been decided yet. Normally it would be at the court, fingerprinting, photographing, etc. But in this instance, that it might be done at an undisclosed site, not at the courthouse.
And so what other types of security preparations are being made? And in terms of the former president and his legal team, what's their strategy?
If you took a walk around Center Street right now here in Lower Manhattan, you would see steel barricades, metal barricades, almost like bike racks that you saw around the Capitol in a bit of a way ahead of January 6th. Police here in New York are bracing for possible violence. They are hoping for peace, but they know that the former president called for protests over the weekend should he be arrested in the coming days. And so there's a sense of something here is looming, a decision is looming, and the city is getting ready for the possible influx of protesters. They're getting ready also for the possibility of someone who's not part of the chatter online of domestic extremism. Bill Bratton told me earlier today they're worried about a possible lone wolf, but they're trying to project a police presence here in Lower Manhattan. When you walk around, you see that all of the 35,000 New York Police Department officers are walking in full uniform. And that's a directive from the top. Be present, be available.
You also have some new reporting on some of the other investigations involving the former president. Bring us up to speed specifically on what's happening in the special counsel investigation. We could find out soon whether one of Trump's attorneys will have to appear before a grand jury in the classified documents case. What do we know?
As a reporter, you almost go through a checklist of all the ongoing investigations of former President Trump. Yes, there's this criminal investigation here in the city of New York, but there was also major news today on the grand jury investigation in Washington of how former President Trump handled classified documents. Now, a group of judges in an appeals court has said that Trump's lawyer, Evan Corcoran, will be compelled to testify. And not only that, Corcoran, Trump's lawyer, is being told he must share his documents. He must share audio files, all of the materials he has collected as the attorney for the former president. Now that material, usually protected by attorney-client privilege, will be part of a grand jury proceeding looking into the classified documents. That's a major turn in that case because the special counsel might now have real insight into the deliberations on the Trump side and what exactly the former president said to his lawyer about those documents.
All right, Robert Costa following it all for us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The Federal Reserve is raising interest rates again in an effort to ease inflation. The Fed increased rates by 1/4 of a percentage point today. The move comes amid increased concern over the U.S. banking system after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank earlier this month. During the rate hike announcement, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said there was a long way to go to get inflation back down to 2%. CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now from the White House. Caitlin, welcome. And Wall Street, of course, didn't take too well to the Fed's rate hike today, with stocks ending sharply lower, down more than 500 points. Does the White House have anything to say about this?
Yeah, Nicole, well, this was expected news, but the White House has maintained all along that the Fed operates independently and by design so that it's not influenced by politics. But certainly the political fallout does have some implications for this White House that wants to be projecting an economy that looks strong. Remember, the president is preparing to run for re-election as we expect, and of course wants these inflation numbers to come down. So they are saying, look, we have given the Fed all the room it needs to do whatever they need to do. They don't comment on the Fed's decisions or make any judgment about those decisions. But the White House maintained today that they believe the economy is strong. They pointed jobs numbers and other items. But Nicole, the real issue here is this acknowledgement from the Fed that inflation is still too high, that those numbers have to come down. And we've been talking to economists today who point out that the price of goods, milk, bread, carton of eggs is up 110% from what it was last year. Americans are having to spend about $372 more a month than they did at this point last year. So this is a White House that wants to project confidence in the economy. But when you look at how Americans are kind of feeling about it and what the Fed announced today, there's an acknowledgement that inflation is still too high.
The Fed chairman also weighed in on the banking crisis. Let's hear what he had to say about that.
Our banking system is sound and resilient with strong capital and liquidity. We will continue to closely monitor conditions in the banking system and are prepared to use all of our tools as needed to keep it safe and sound.
So some lawmakers on Capitol Hill have been very critical of Chair Powell. Senator Warren, probably the most vocal. She's called for an investigation into the Fed and says he shouldn't even be the chair. I mean, does the White House still have confidence in Chairman Powell?
Yeah, Nicole, I asked Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, that very question today, given these rate hikes, and she said yes. the president has confidence in the Federal Reserve chairman. But you point out this really interesting dynamic within the Democratic Party where you see some disagreement here. You mentioned Elizabeth Warren, who has been very critical of the Fed chair and these decisions. You've had some Democrats wanting them to pause, as some expected them to do today, given the latest that happened with the banks. But you also have Democrats who are supportive of the Fed chair. I talked to Senator Mark Warner earlier this week, who said that, Powell gets it from both sides of the aisle, but that at the end of the day, what he is doing is has confidence in that kind of course of action. But this is a challenge for the Fed given this recent banking crisis, because on one hand, they know that they need to address these inflation numbers. On the other hand, they know that there is this wider concern about the banking crisis. And Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell also said that, there may be some actions that the banks take in terms of tightening that also may have an impact on consumers.
And of course, we know that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was also addressing this recent collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank in testimony today on Capitol Hill. Here's a bit of what she had to say.
It risked contagion throughout the banking system. We invoke this exception in order to try to contain the contagion that seemed to all of us to be inherent in these uninsured depositors being wiped out or severely haircutted.
So the secretary also went on to say that the administration is still working to stabilize the banking system. What steps are they taking?
Well, the big question is, will this be extended to other banks? Will the the coverage for depositors extend beyond $250,000? That was kind of the message that was being sent a couple of weeks ago when they made that decision. And so that is the question that a lot of people have is, how you can't not do this for other banks. But the main message coming from the Treasury Secretary today and from Powell over at the Fed was that they do have confidence in the banking system, that the steps that the administration took were necessary to prevent this contagion, and they feel like they are in a good position, which was another reason why the Fed ultimately felt comfortable raising these rates. He said that they were looking at all of the economic data that was coming in as well that also contributed to that decision.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns at the White House for us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
With TikTok's CEO set to appear before a House committee tomorrow, we'll talk with two members of Congress to find out what they want to hear as lawmakers from both sides of the aisle call for the app to be banned. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today. I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And there becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, oh, we're gonna tell you about that too.
We tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You ready?
a generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
I identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. TikTok CEO Shao Zi Chu will testify tomorrow before the House Energy and Commerce Committee, as many in Congress are urging for a ban of the social media app. Earlier today, I spoke with two members of the House panel, Vice Chair and North Dakota Republican Congressman Kelly Armstrong, as well as Delaware Democratic Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. I asked both of them whether there should be a ban on TikTok.
I don't know that yet. I think we should be seriously considering it. But if we're going to do it to the American people, we're going to have to be able to make a case. And there's already talk about a potential sale or all of those things. We don't want this data in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. Period. And if we can't guarantee that is not happening and they don't have access to this, because it's not just the data collection, it's the technologies that exist right now to analyze that data in real time. We're having all these conversations about AI, all of these different issues. If you're spending an hour a day on a video streaming service, there is a tremendous amount of information about you that is, you can never get it off the internet once it exists again, and we don't want that in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party.
I think we need a national privacy data law. I think we also need to make sure that the administration, the Biden administration, has the ability to, whether through Department of Commerce, to be able to also exercise whatever tools that they need to exercise, and that's part of
But you're not ready to go as far as a ban.
I feel like we need to have all options on the table, but I know, again, personally, why this is so important to me is because I've got nieces, I've got nephews, I know incredible content creators that are out there. We as a country need to make sure that we are all safe. And that's really what this hearing is about. It's about dealing with misinformation, it's about protecting our data, and it's also about our national security.
So what do you want to hear from the CEO?
Well, this hearing is going to be very important. Our committee, Energy and Commerce, has been talking to social media platforms and tech platforms for the past few years about making sure that our children are protected, that our national security is intact, and that we also deal with issues of misinformation. And so we will hear in this hearing from the CEO, and as this is one of the largest platforms in the world, it's important for us to make sure that those three pillars are taken care of and that we are addressing them.
Why did you specifically want to hear from the CEO, and why do you think he is testifying before your panel first?
It's important to recognize that this is not new for us on Energy and Commerce. I have personally led letters and also introduced legislation to deal with deceptive practices on social media platforms. We know there are incredible benefits to social media, but there are also some risks and some threats. And so what we want to do as a committee, and this is bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats, is really get to the heart of some of the issues and concerns we have to ensure that our children, as I said, are protected, and to ensure that we don't have national security risks and threats, which we have seen and heard of. And so we want him to address those things, as well as talk about a path forward that ensures that misinformation is not out there.
We have seen the CEO try to get ahead of his testimony. We've actually obtained a copy of his testimony, and he says that the company is working on a firewall that would seal off protected U.S. user data from unauthorized foreign access. He will testify tomorrow. The bottom line is this: American data stored on American soil by an American company, overseen by American personnel. Do you believe him?
I think they're trying, right? It's called Project Texas. They're using a company called Oracle, but they've been working, and the reason is, right, this isn't purely altruistic. There's 150 million Americans on TikTok, but more importantly for them is we create a ton of the content that is looked at worldwide. I think the question ends up being, is the juice worth the squeeze, and how can we prove that up? Huawei has a very similar agreement with Great Britain, and Huawei is now being taken out of Great Britain. The key is, can Oracle or any of these people creating this tell us for lock certainty that they haven't missed 3 lines of code somewhere in all of this in 6 weeks, where if Beijing wants to turn on or off the switch, that we've got real problems with how this American citizens' data is being collected.
So you want to learn more?
Yeah, I want to learn more. I think we all do. I mean, again, this is, I mean, when Congress gets paternal and tells 150 million Americans something's bad for them that they really enjoy, we better have really good, solid reasons for it. But I think the other question, right, they want to create a new program in CFIUS, they want to do all of these things, and eventually we're going to have to ask the question, is the juice worth the squeeze? This is a lot of standing up of government regulatory regime for one particular company, and
but
that's going to cost money.
In terms of this Project Texas, I mean, do you think that's sufficient? Does it address lawmakers' concerns? Because I know many have expressed concerns about national security.
It doesn't for me yet, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but I have real concerns about whether or not we can actually do this. Like I said, the effort is there. Obviously, it's there. They're trying to do it. Whether or not it's effective or not, we don't know that answer yet.
We also expect the CEO to talk more about some of the safety controls that the company has put in place specifically for minors. Do you think they go far enough?
I don't, but I don't think social media, I think this is a broader scale conversation about social media and minors and all of those different issues. The reality is my 15-year-old daughter and my 13-year-old son are significantly better on all of this stuff than I would ever be in my entire life. And there's a lot of trust but verify, and that's more, in TikTok's case, that is even more significant because of who the parent company is.
And we'll have more coverage of that hearing tomorrow here on Red and Blue. Now, despite officially jumping in the race for the 2024 Republican nomination, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has been ignoring insults and nicknames from Trump for months. That is, until this week. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original documentary from CBS reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job?
I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart.
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis until now has avoided getting into a war of words with former President Trump. New poll numbers from Monmouth University have the former president making significant gains over DeSantis just in the last month. In an interview with Piers Morgan, DeSantis did not hold back when asked about the differences between him and Trump.
Well, I mean, I think there's a few things. I mean, obviously, the approach to COVID was different. I mean, I would have fired somebody like Fauci. I think that he got way too big for his britches, and I think he did a lot of damage. I also think just in terms of my approach to leadership, I get personnel in the government who have the agenda of the people and share our agenda. If you bring your own agenda in, you're gone. We're just not going to have that. So the way we run the government, I think, is no daily drama, focus on the big picture, and put points on the board. And I think that that's something that's very important.
CBS News political reporter Aaron Navarro joins us now. And Aaron, I want to continue with more of this interview, which is kind of getting quite a bit of buzz. Of course, the governor was also asked about some of these nicknames that the former president has called him. So let's take a listen to that.
Which is your favourite nickname that Trump's given you so far? Is it Ron DeSanctimonious or Meatball Ron?
Well, I can't.
I think even he went off Meatball Ron.
I can't. I don't know how to spell DeSanctimonious. I don't really know what it means, but I kind of like it's long. It's got a lot of vowels. I mean, so we'd go with that. That's fine. You can call me whatever you want. I mean, just as long as you also call me a winner, because that's what we've been able to do in Florida is put a lot of points on the board.
So he didn't seem to be too offended, but what do you make of the governor's response?
It's almost gloves off. For months, from watching DeSantis in press conferences and in the interviews he does, mainly with Fox, people ask often about Trump, and he often says, I'm focused on Florida. He kind of ignores it. This week, he seems to be acknowledging it. And
why do you think he seems to be engaging?
At a point, at this point right now, you mentioned the Monmouth University poll. You are seeing Trump with some momentum in these very early hypothetical polls. But also for DeSantis, he's building up his response to Trump as he's also building up his 2024 campaign. According to 2 people I've talked to familiar with the DeSantis orbit, he's going to be in Nevada, South Carolina, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Maryland in April alone. So he is getting out there. He is ramping things up and building up the infrastructure.
Do we think this is a sign that he's closer to running? Do we have a sense of when he's going to announce?
It's still expected that he will announce after this legislative session ends in Florida in May. Could be early summer as well. But it's also just a sign that DeSantis is getting ready to take on Trump, who he knows is going to be his biggest challenge if he gets into this Republican primary. And he told Piers Morgan that and said, I have to get past Trump. I'm not, ignoring that. But he believes that focusing on Biden is also an approach he can take. So it's all a sign that he's really starting to get the gears turning.
How is the former president responding, particularly to this latest interview by the governor?
Right. Angrily. He says that DeSantis is going to liberal media by doing this. That's something a lot of his allies have talked about. And that, he's propped up by the, quote, Republican establishment. But if DeSantis is barely taking his gloves off, Trump has been fully gloves off since last November when he first gave him the sanctimonious nickname. So for Trump, it's just another day of attacks to someone that he sees as probably his biggest rival in a primary right now.
And do you see, because I feel like everybody kind of has been tap dancing around the former president, and still we have a number of candidates who have not declared yet. But do you think that, more people will start to take the gloves off, if you will?
It could open the doors a bit, given that DeSantis is always behind Trump in all these polls. Though I will note Vice President Pence, who, has a very unique relationship with Trump and is potentially looking at a run. He's gone after Trump on things like January 6th, on Social Security and Medicare. Pence has gone after DeSantis and Trump when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. So Pence has definitely taken some jabs at Trump. But yeah, when you look at Senator Tim Scott, who hasn't jumped into the race, Nikki Haley, who has, when they're asked about this potential indictment, they kind of come to Trump's defense, saying it's politicized. And we'll see. We'll see if DeSantis kind of opens the doors for some of these other candidates that don't have the name ID, aren't as up in the polls to start taking some hits.
Yeah, and I guess there is some concern it could hurt them with Trump voters if they're trying to pick some of them off.
Right, and that's the interesting thing to watch with DeSantis is how does he toe that line of making the contrast clear between him and who's likely to be his biggest primary opponent, while also not offending a lot of these Trump voters. And it was interesting when I was in Iowa to cover DeSantis, I ran into a lot of people that say Trump and DeSantis are their top two picks. They think that DeSantis has a lot of Trump's policies without the baggage, and they're open, but that certainly shows one way that DeSantis could market himself to Trump's base.
All right. Well, things are just starting to rev up with quite a bit of time to go. Aaron Navarro, thanks so much for keeping a close eye on all things politics. We'll see you back soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And that does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.
In today's Money Watch, business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to help.
How do you even begin to make the best use of your money? If you've got a match from your employer, don't give away that money.
Dollar Jill, y'all.
CBS Mornings, starting